You are tuned to Channel 9, Kennett MO Cablevision. Thank you for watching. It's time for talk. Each evening at this time, Monday through Friday, Rosemary interviews local personalities and others who bring items of interest to this community. Time for Talk is a community betterment service designed to cooperate with our local community betterment program. Tonight, Rosemary takes us by means of portable camera out of our studios and maybe into your neighborhood. And now, it's time for talk.
Have you driven through town lately and seen the signs Citizens Savings Bank and thought to yourself, when on earth was that ever Citizens Savings? I remember that as the Bank of Kennett. This afternoon, we're spending the afternoon sitting here on the lawn of the courthouse, and we have talked a gentleman into us who has agreed to come out here and sit in the sunshine, talk with us about what the square looked in 1850 when he was born. I got a startled look out of that. This is Mr. Paul Price, and Paul, you haven't really been around since 1850, but you've been around quite a while.
Well, way before 1850.
All right, Mr. Paul Price, who was born not far, not many blocks from here, but it was practically in the it was not the end of the world, but you could see it from there. Paul, did I hear you say at one time you lived all your life in that one house?
310 North Walnut Street, Kennett, Missouri. I've been there all my life. And we're standing here sitting on this flower box. It used to be the first bandstand, as I understand, in Kennett, Missouri.
Okay. Now, there's been some controversy over that. Didn't somebody put this bandstand on a different side of the courthouse on a mural?
Well, but that's on the northeast corner.
Okay, was there a bandstand there, too?
There was a bandstand on the northeast corner.
So, but this one was the first one?
This was the first one here. The municipal band, in fact, the municipal band started before the school ever had a band. In fact, the school started a band because they got the money from the city to help start a school band.
Okay, so the city
during Dr. Mills's days.
Okay, now, can give me an idea of years in here when you think maybe, you know, the school band. Are you talking about the 20s?
No, in 50s.
50s?
In 50s, they still had a municipal band.
Who was the man who directed this city band for so long? I think we've got some old pictures.
The last man I remember was a man named Wilkerson.
Okay.
Had the city band.
Did you play?
No, I wasn't talented in the band.
We have a picture of him on the Baptist church steps. We'll throw that on for you.
James Conn's, I think, opened this department store that he has is James Conn in the 20s sometime. Well, I didn't get in the service station minister until 33. But I knew Mr. Conn very well. He was a very fine man.
All right, okay. The square really boomed, was really the boom town in those years, wasn't it, Paul? Were there any outlying things, or was the square just about the extent of the trade area?
Well, on Saturday night in the 30s, why everybody came to Kennett and tried to find a parking place so they could see all the entertainment. If you wanted to walk down the streets, the side of the square, you walked in the street if you was in a hurry.
Okay, all right, and I have heard some interesting stories about the first street in town that was paved was Washington, and I think we have somebody that told an interesting story about they'd drive from Zenith just to ride up and down the paved street, Washington. Right? I heard you say something about when there were cars, a big treat on Sunday afternoons. Why don't you read that?
Yeah, after I was married and our kids were born. It was Sunday afternoon. After dinner, we'd drive up to Kennett and get over on Washington Avenue and drive down to Andrew Davison's place and turn around and go back. And then we'd make one more circle down and back and then drive on back to Zenith because it's the only hard surface road in the country.
So that was a great Sunday afternoon to drive down Washington 2 times.
Something to do.
The only
This time on Sunday afternoon, if you wanted to see anybody, you went down and sat on the corner of Washington Avenue on some side street, and you'd see everybody in town that had an automobile driving north, east, and west. Okay. That's what they did on Sunday afternoon. What time they weren't sitting in front of Blakemore's drugstore getting a cherry ice, a Coca-Cola, Tutti Frutti ice cream cone. Now, it's vacant right now, but on Sunday afternoon in those days, everybody was in town.
Okay, and that was the place to go to get something to drink after you drove around as much as you wanted to.
Well, Blakemore's and E.A. Baldwin had a drugstore over on the east side where Kell's Sporting Goods store was.
Okay, another one on the other side. All right, we're going to look at that side of the square in just a minute. All right, Paul, of course, the Bank of Kennett, we started off with this Citizen Savings, and eventually it became the Bank of Kennett, was the Bank of Kennett in a lot of my years that have been here in Kennett. Of course, it's moved down to its present location as the Centerre Bank.
Well, back in my time, in the early 30s, the Bank of Kennett, or 20s, was on the north side of the square, just close to James Cahn's department store. But
all right, we've moved around to the north side of the square. Paul, you had a comment about James Cahn's.
Well, James Cahn's was on the square here on the corner where it is now at the present time. And the next building was a grocery store. And the next building was the Bank of Kennett.
All right, here where this last James Cahn's was the Bank of Kennett.
Now, in the Chapman's grocery store, which I happen to be a relative of mine, on Saturday, we'd make up a 50-gallon barrel of lemonade and sell it nickel a glass, all you could drink.
Nickel a glass, all you could drink?
All you could drink.
And where would you be, right out here on the sidewalk?
No, the barrel would be inside.
Oh, okay.
It was very modern because we had big wash tub, and everybody drank out of the glass. When they got through, we'd dip the glass into the wash tub and rinse it off. Very sanitary.
Okay, now, where'd you get the ice for the lemonade?
We got it at the ice plant up on Electric Street.
Okay.
Got a 100-pound cake would just about fit in that barrel. Of course, it was so cold you couldn't drink too much.
Okay, so that was it. All you could drink for a nickel, but it was cold and you couldn't manage.
It was made out of about 2 dozen lemons, and the rest of Blakemore's lemon extract we put in there to make it.
Now, you're revealing trade secrets to do that. Blakemore's lemon extract in that lemonade. Okay. So the Bank of Kennett was right here at the James Cahn sign about.
Yeah, Bank of Kennett was here, and then along in here was the only thing I remember was an abstract office that Huffman's Abstract Company was in. And then somewhere along in here was a man named Hess's Barber Shop. And next door to that was the first Kroger store we ever had.
Okay, now, are you, about where Smith's is, was the Kroger store or on down?
About where Smith's is, just this side of People's Furniture Store.
Okay.
Of course, People's Furniture Store, I don't know when the Brogdons opened up People's Furniture Store, but it used to be used for fireman's ball. We'd have entertainment, have a big dance in People's Furniture Store. The firemen would put it on to raise money for their
okay, well, was the furniture in there?
No furniture. It was empty.
Oh, okay.
There was still some empty buildings back in those days on the square like there is today.
All right, okay, all right. And then the corner...
next building was Riggs's Hardware.
Yes.
And that's Riggs's, we know Doc Riggs's father's hardware store.
Okay, and that was a real early store on this square, too, wasn't it?
I don't remember how early. It was there but way back there.
The earliest that you're talking about, it was there. Yeah. Okay. I remember, Paul, coming to town in the 30s from Cardwell, and this was really the city, getting a drink over there. Seemed like in front of the drugstore, the Shelton store. Where was I?
Well, it was more or less in that line, we'd say, right between J.C. Penney's store and Blakemore's drugstore. And that was the outside drinking fountain for everybody. Got them it wasn't too cold, best I remember, but it was a drinking fountain for the public. Mm-hmm. But then, of course, out here in the center, they had a fountain that was made out of a horse's head and had some big tall ears, and of course the farmers would park their mules in behind James Cahn's on the north and in behind Keith Mitchell's drugstore on the south side, and of course they'd come around here to get water for their mules when they come to town.
Okay, we surely can locate some picture of that fountain with mules. We'll try to do that. Well, if you've missed an earlier program where we were standing up on this Kennett Square, you missed hearing a lot of early history of Kennett. We've been talking with Paul Price, who has spent his entire life here in Kennett. He's been a businessman. He's been involved in several things here in the area. We've been coming around the square. We've looked at the old Citizen Saving. We've heard history about the post office and the open air theater before it was born, James Cahn, the opera house above James Cahn. Just lots of activities have been going on. Paul has brought us along. We've talked about the first bandstand. We've come around all the way to the City Hall. now that's in the background, and we're going to pick his brains from here to tell us some of the activities that went on this side of the square. Paul, what do you remember about the City Hall?
Well, the City Hall, best I remember, on Saturdays nights, of course, always picked up a lot of drunks, and if somebody always sat in the jail on fire, which was in the rear of the City Hall, which now is the museum.
So somebody always set it on fire?
Somebody always set it on fire, and of course, then they'd get it so full, they'd have so many they couldn't take them there, so they drug them down the street here on Saturday night down to the local county jail, which was on Kennett Street at that time.
I have been inside the museum, and the bars and some of the original things are back there, are they not?
They're still back there.
Okay.
Cecil Lamley has quite an interesting part in the museum there with his trinkets.
Do you remember any of the past city or county sheriffs or chief of police that were quite colorful characters, that any particular thing we would be interested in knowing about?
Well, I could reminisce. He was a man who was local sheriff named Ras Gruggett. He went out, broke into the saloon and got his finger shot off. Luckily, that's all he got.
Got his finger
shot off back breaking up at the still.
Where was the still?
I think out around the floodway ditch, as far as I can remember.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, those were the days when the stills were common. Paul, bring us on around. What do you know about these buildings?
Well, we're talking about over here on the east side of the square, and this first building here is where the last room that I remember, this Kurt Wilson we was talking about, had the municipal band in.
Oh, you had band practice here where Ann's Hallmark shop is?
Ann's Hallmark.
Okay. Okay.
And then you come on down the street, and then there was Sally Ann Bakery was long in here.
Yes, and I remember that where Bickerstaff is. I remember you could buy donuts at
3 for a nickel.
Oh, I remember eating a dozen one time and sick. You talk about.
You asked T.A. Brown how he likes donuts.
Okay, why? What's the story?
T.A. would help me at the Uptown service station before I got in the one on the square, and I'd send him over to the donut shop, the bakery shop, to buy donuts and get a quart of milk, and that was our meal of nighttime.
Okay, so that was.
Smell them all over the square.
I remember that. That was the trip to Kennett was worthwhile from Cargill because you could go to the bakery. Okay, come on along here.
Somewhere along in here, I believe, would be a man named Uncle Joe Wellman, had a 10-cent store. And
was that before 10-cent stores were really chain stores?
That was in Kennett. That was the first one, as far as I remember. It ended up being John Kerry's 10-cent store.
Okay.
But Mr. Wellman, he had him a speaker, and he put it upside to entertain everybody on Saturday night on the square. But one Saturday night, the lights went out. And Uncle Joe was quite a character, and he began to clap his hands over his loudspeaker, which he could talk to people in the score, and clap his hands and say, everybody keep clapping your hands. The good Lords are watching you when the lights would go out.
He wanted them to clap their hands.
He wanted them to clap their hands so they couldn't pick up any of his merchandise. Of course, it ended up, that was really finally passed the city ordinance that you couldn't have a loudspeaker like that. He's because of that.
Because he made so
much noise out on the square.
That everybody fussed. Very good.
And then you go on down the street, of course, it was along about this time, it could have been
of course, I remember the tremendously big fire, not all that many.
Pool hall in here where this blue front is. No, Grogan could have been Grogan, but a man named Ballard. Ballard was the cook in there and cooked hamburgers.
Weren't there?
Huh?
Were there 2 stories to this building?
No. Oh yeah, no. The 2-story didn't come in until you got down over Skeeter Kells.
Okay.
And of course, in the Skeeter Kells, there on the north side of Kells was a jewelry store. And of course, before Kells came in, it was East Side Drugstore, which was quite a kid's hangout during the late 20s.
Now, I remember a pool hall in there somewhere. I thought there were 2. Was there just one?
Just one. Best I can remember, just one.
Okay.
But this East Side Drugstore was quite a kid hangout. And, of course, back in them days, they had the county track meet, and everybody would come to Kennett on Friday and Saturday for the county track meet. Of course, you couldn't stir them in Baldwin's drugstore.
Okay.
Getting a chili dog and this and that.
I thought chili dogs were a new invention, and here you talk.
No, nothing new.
We've been going around the square and reminiscing. I've been listening. Paul's been reminiscing about the way the square looked way back when. As he said, he doesn't go back all that far, but he's just remembering what his grandpa told him. We hope you've enjoyed a backward look into Kennett's history today. The fountain with the horse's head and ears out here, it all sounds great. A backward look into Kennett's history.